Hey everybody, Charles from GMAT Ninja Tutoring here. Today we're going to talk about the long reading comprehension passages on the GRE. So these are 1 to 3 paragraphs long, always have 3 questions attached to them. Plan for today, going to talk about big picture, how important are these? We want to make sure you use your study time wisely and understand how frequently these questions show up. That'll give you a little bit of high-level advice on how best to tackle these. Then we're going to jump into a passage, official GRE passage, 3 paragraphs long, and we'll show you how best to approach these. All right. So in case you're new to the GRE, 2 verbal sections, 12 questions on the first, 15 questions on the second. Always going to be about half and half vocabulary and reading comp. So 14 vocabulary-based questions, 13 reading comp questions. Here's what we're seeing on all of the practice tests, every actual exam we've run into. You're going to see 2 of these longer passages, 3 questions each. So a total of 6 questions, so between 20 and 25% of your test. So pretty significant thing, definitely worth making sure you have your process right for these. Okay, so 20 plus years of tutoring for the GRE. Here's what we see over and over from students that causes them problems. A lot of people overread, a lot of people underread. We don't want you to do either of those things. What do I mean by overreading and underreading? The overreading. What we see from students sometimes, passage pops up on the screen and they just try to squeeze every little drop out of that thing and they're reading for every single detail, trying to memorize it as they go through. And they kind of turn that passage into just this vomit of facts. Fact. 2 problems with that. One is they spend way too much time. Number 2, if you're hyper-focused on every single detail in that passage, and then they ask you, hey, what's the big picture? What's the main idea? What's the primary purpose? What role did the second paragraph play in the overall argument? Those kind of big picture questions, which you're going to see a lot of on the GRE, those become a problem if you've been hyper-focused on the details. So we don't want you to do that. At the opposite extreme, all kinds of crazy advice we see out there, read the first sentence and then skim, or read the first paragraph and then skim. I don't want you to do any of that. If you read that passage too quickly initially, then what's going to happen is you get to the questions and you're going to look at the answer choices and go, oh, let me go find that. And you go back and forth between the passage, the answer choices, passage, answer choices. And next thing you know, you spent an eternity on it. We don't want you to do that either. Instead, I want you to take a nice, consistent, measured approach. You're always going to get these big picture questions. Why did the author write this? What's the purpose? What's the main idea? Even your detail questions, they're not going to ask you, what does line 27 say? They're going to say, hey, what role does line 27 play in the author's overall argument? So I want you to focus on the why as you go through. Stop at the end of that first paragraph and go, okay, why? Why did the author write this? What do they want from me? What do they want me to buy into? Or they try to settle the dispute between 2 competing ideas? Is it trying to argue for something? What different points of views do I see here? So anchor yourself in the big picture. If you can answer that why, fantastic. You're in good shape to move on. Second paragraph and moving forward, same idea. Stop and say, okay, why is this paragraph here? What does the author want from me? And just as importantly, how does it connect to the previous paragraphs? And we'll model that in just a moment on an official GRE passage. If you can do that nice and consistently, you're going to be in really, really good shape. You're not going to waste time overreading. You're not going to waste time spinning your wheels too much on those questions once you get to them. And that's the way you're going to maximize your performance, regardless of whether you're an incredible reader or just a pretty good one. All right. So once we'll hop into a passage here. We'll take it paragraph by paragraph. Once we do that, after we finish up that first question attached to it, we'll give you a quick little overview of how best to study for reading comprehension. Before we do that, if you enjoy these videos, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Helps other people find them. We do one-on-one tutoring. We love offering up these videos for free. This is part of a full, complete video course. So if you need some extra one-on-one help, please reach out to us, gmatninja.com. And if you're enjoying this and it saved you money that you otherwise would have spent on a course, please consider donating to some of our favorite charities. We offer these free courses, GMAT, GRE, Executive Assessment, partly because we enjoy offering something for free, but we also use it to support some of our favorite charities. So if that's appealing, please visit us, gmatninja.com/donate. All right, let's hop on into this first passage and we'll give you 1 paragraph at a time and kind of talk through how I want you to process that information. All right, as always, if you want to take a little more time with that paragraph, go for it. Okay, very, very simple thing that I'd like you to do here, these long GRE passages. I'm just going to give you one paragraph at a time here in this video. Going to have 3 paragraphs total. But what I really want is for you to stop at the end of every paragraph. Just make sure that you're clear about why the author wrote that paragraph. So looking for some sort of point of view, some sort of opinion expressed. Make sure you get the main thrust of it. Do you need to memorize every detail? Nope, that's going to get you into trouble. Great if you understand every detail, but if you obsess over them, you're going to turn that passage into fact, 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 fact. They're going to ask you about the main idea or primary purpose, and your brain's going to be so clogged with facts you can't think. So keep it really simple on that first pass through. Stop it in the paragraph and go, okay, what's the author after here? Pretty straightforward paragraph here. First sentence basically states the author's opinion. So what's the author trying to do here? Basically, I would say that the author is trying to credit Griffith with the artistic maturing of cinema. Okay, great. Pretty straightforward. Beyond that, it's really just a whole lot of detail. So how did Griffith make these breakthroughs in cinema? Talks about composition, briefly references his love of Victorian painting, talks about this idea that he believed in having a foreground and a middle ground and a background, using close-ups, kind of fragmenting pieces of the camera footage to kind of create different effects, to change the emphasis from shot to shot, all that sort of thing. Okay, great. Now, you'll notice, personally, I don't like to write down all those details. And the reason is that I want to stay focused on the big picture. I'm going to kind of scan through, make sure I understood those details, how they support it, acknowledging that those details are there. But you want to be careful. You're going to burn a lot of time if you over-obsess on the details. Be careful not to do that. Make sure you're anchored in that big picture for every paragraph. Now, at this stage is where I often get the question, how many notes should I take? What should those notes look like? Again, what I like to do, something that's nice and short, 8 to 12 words that gets me at that author's purpose as much as I can see it in that paragraph. Kind of what's that main idea? I want to stay anchored to the big picture. That's what my notes do. Now, if what you wanted to do is write more, that's okay. But the reason I say that it depends on the person, some people love to write, and the easiest way to stay engaged in reading a passage is if you're sitting there keeping your hand moving. So if you're a kinesthetic learner, you might be somebody that needs to keep writing, keep jotting down notes in order to stay engaged in the passage. About 10 to 15% of the students we meet are that way. Writing constantly might be a really good thing for you. If that's the case for you, feel free to write more than I'm writing here. That's not a problem. Just make sure that it's helping you engage in the big picture and the passage as a whole. On the opposite extreme, we meet students who try to write down even minimal notes like this, 8 to 12 words, and they find that they disengage. As soon as they go to the page to write something down, their brains kind of fly off in outer space. And we go, wait, what did I just read? Again, maybe 10, 15, 20% of students we meet are on that extreme. If that's you and you don't want to write this down, that's okay. I do feel really, really strongly that I want you to take that step. Stop in the paragraph, anchor yourself in the big picture before we move on to the next one. Okay, nice, simple approach. If you need to customize it a little bit for yourself, that is totally great. For most people, something like this is a really, really good starting point. All right, with that, let's move on to the second paragraph. And we'll give you a minute or two here. All right, the second paragraph here, fairly detail heavy. As always, I still want you to focus on the big picture, try to figure out what's going on in this paragraph, why did the author put it there? And just as importantly is what's going on this paragraph in isolation, how does it connect to the previous paragraph? Here, what's the author's focus? Really, it's the dramatic effects via editing. And okay, well, how does that connect to the previous paragraph? First paragraph kind of said, okay, the author's kind of stating their opinion right out of the gate, crediting Griffith with the artistic maturing of cinema. Kind of the focus here, though, is on composition. And really the second paragraph, pretty straightforward. Dramatic effects that Griffith achieves via editing. Now, if you wanted to, you could take a little bit of time and kind of go, okay, what were those different ways of pulling that off? What were these different tools? There was the juxtaposition of images and varying the speed and rhythm of them. Talks about the flashback. Talks about how his producers weren't really into this at first, which is kind of interesting. Not necessarily the main thrust of the paragraph, but kind of an interesting thing to note. Talks about the idea of cross-cutting, so cross-cutting between two parallel timelines. So flashback, cross-cutting, juxtaposition of images. If you love taking notes and it helps you engage, if that's something that you wanted to write down as you're digesting this, that is totally fine. Personally, I choose not to. But really the important thing is just to say, all right, author leads off by saying, I'm going to credit Griffith with the artistic maturing of cinema, talk about how Griffith achieved that through composition. Second paragraph just gets into the various ways, 3 or 4 different examples of things that Griffith did via editing to help achieve that aim. All right, last paragraph. Go ahead and give you a minute on this one. All right, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not trying to melt your face off with a super hard passage here. This is it. Nice straightforward structure here. Once again, paragraph 1, author's crediting Griffith with the artistic maturing of cinema, talks about composition as one way that Griffith achieved that. Second paragraph talks about Griffith's innovations in editing. This last one, innovations in the range and treatment of subjects. So that was unusual. He was really eclectic, bouncing all over the place in terms of the subjects, also in terms of lengths. So the 4 reels, the unprecedented length of a 1-hour film, pretty hilarious to us now, but unusually long films. And then again, I'm always looking for something that expresses the author's opinion or somebody else's opinion. I'm always looking for that point of view just as a habit on GRE reading comprehension. Here you've got this nice little bit at the end. It's talking specifically about that one film, but says that was a breakthrough that gave intellectual respectability to cinema. The reason I'm picking on that, respectability, is that, again, we've got this theme kind of emerging through all of this. I want to be able to answer the primary purpose question without taking a breath, without having to reread anything. I want to make sure I get that big picture. So again, author starts out by saying Griffith is single-handedly responsible for the artistic maturing of cinema, talks about how with the composition and editing, range of subjects, creating longer films, and then kind of finishes up by saying, look at this newfound intellectual respectability. for the cinema. Okay, very, very clear where the author stands on this. Plenty of details there that we didn't necessarily need to obsess over on the first reading. Maybe they're going to come into play on the questions and maybe they won't. But if you're reading it this way, taking nice lean notes, you're going to be pretty efficient with the passage. You know where to look for those details when you need them. If it's something related to editing, look in the second paragraph, composition, first paragraph, range of subjects, check out that third paragraph. This is all you need to do. Keep it nice and simple. Don't overdo it. Don't boil the ocean on your first read. And with that, I think we are ready to dive into that first question. We're going to take you through 3 questions here. Here's number 1. All right. Great thing is, if you've done this nice, simple process we've gone through, these primary purpose questions should be super, super easy. And even though we didn't really get into a ton of notes, there's not a ton of stuff where we dove into the details, kind of glossed over those a little bit. No problem. If you've really been focused on what's the point of each paragraph, what's the author trying to get at, why did they write it, how do these paragraphs fit together? If you've done that job well, these primary purpose questions are generally a breeze, hopefully. All right. So primary purpose of the passage, is it to discuss the importance of Griffith to the development of cinema? That sounds spot on. Now notice here, I'm not just going to pick that and move on. I want you to always be really conservative as you go through. Make sure you don't fall in love with one. You want to make sure you didn't misread A, go through the rest of them. If there's another one that you like and you're down to 2, maybe that's your cue to kind of look around one more time, maybe revisit the passage. But don't just pick something. Always go through all 5 answer choices, put them on equal footing. Try to find 4 wrong answers, not just 1 right answer. Really, really important part of developing consistency on these kind of problems. All right, answer choice B, describe the impact of cinema on the flashback and other editing innovations. That's definitely not the main purpose. It talks about that, but that's certainly not the heart of the passage. We're interested in what Griffith did overall to contribute to the artistic maturing of cinema. B's out. C, deplore the state of American cinema before the advent of Griffith. Really none of that. There's really deploring meaning to sort of say mean things about what happened in cinema before Griffith. Certainly not the main point. Really not something that happens at all. I mean, obviously says that Griffith brought in a whole new era, but doesn't say that there was necessarily anything wrong with what came before it. D, analyze the changes in cinema wrought by the introduction of the multi-reel film. Multi-reel films were a tiny, tiny part of that very last paragraph, certainly not the main thrust of the passage. Or E, document Griffith's impact on the choice of subject matter in American films. It's another thing that happens, right, where it in that last paragraph talks about the way Griffith sort of introduced all sorts of different topics, was super eclectic, certainly made contributions to this, but it wasn't the point. It's his overall impact on cinema. So E is out. A is our winner. All right, before we jump into the last 2 questions on this passage, if you really struggled on this passage, this isn't a super tough one. It is an official passage. It's an older one. Not super difficult by any means. If you struggled with the language here, it's possible that you might want to spend some time just working on your overall reading skills. That's certainly a factor. That's what they're trying to test, is how good are your reading skills fundamentally. So if this one is a real struggle, you might be in a situation where you might want to spend 6 months or a year just making sure that you spend a lot of time reading good hard stuff. That's a slow burn. For most of you, That's really not what you need to do. You just want to get some practice with these, focus on kind of developing this technique a little bit, making sure that you're going after the big picture, not overreading, not underreading, not obsessing over details, not skimming over stuff. One of the issues with the GRE, the official guides that are available, there's not a ton of passages in there. If that's not enough for you, I very, very strongly recommend pick up an older edition of the official guide. It's an obsolete one called Practicing to Take the GRE 10th edition, I think originally printed in the early 2000s. We'll put that link in the video description. But that's a good source. There's, let's see, there's about 28 passages in there, I think, that look very much like the modern GRE. So that's one source. There's an even older thing called the GRE Big Book, same sort of deal, old paper-based tests, a couple dozen of these passages in there. So those are options. You could also use GMAT or LSAT reading comprehension. No problem, slightly different formats, but it gets at the same skills. So really any official passage that's long, you're going to be okay. LSAT, GMAT, the old GRE, no problem. So if you need those reps, those are some extra resources. Again, we'll put all those in the video description so that you can get access to them. All right. With that, let's go ahead and hop into the last couple questions. Go ahead and take a couple minutes on this one. All right, this one's a little tougher. If you need an extra minute or two, feel free to hit that pause button. Okay, very common question style on the GRE. You can choose any of these three answer choices, all three of them, two of them. So you're selecting all that apply. We're going to take them one at a time here. So the author suggests that Griffith's contributions to cinema had which ones of the following results? A, literary works, especially Victorian novels, became popular sources for film. Okay, this is a really tempting one because there's several mentions of Victorian something or other throughout the passage. I'm going to go ahead and highlight those here. So Griffith has a love of Victorian painting, and it says that his choice of composition came from his love of Victorian painting. But that doesn't say that Victorian novels necessarily became popular sources for film subjects. Your next mention of Victorian art, in this case novels, that he transposed devices of the Victorian novel to film and gave film mastery of time as well as space. Again, not saying that the novels themselves were popular sources for film subjects yet. And then what about that last paragraph that actually gets into the business of what exactly were the film subjects and how he expanded the subjects used in cinema? But it doesn't say anything about him using Victorian novels specifically. So the only reference there is that he was using such novelties as adaptations from Browning and Tennyson. Now, if you don't know who Browning and Tennyson were, no problem at all. You could assume that they're Victorian novelists, but they're actually not. They're both poets. But it doesn't say anything there, right? We don't know who Browning and Tennyson are. We know that there's adaptations there, that he was employing such novelties as adaptations of Browning and Tennyson. But we don't know that that led to Victorian novels and literary works becoming popular sources for film subjects. That's not stated anywhere at all. Lots of things that kind of sound like they're getting at it, but it never actually states anything that supports A. Pretty tough answer choice, I would argue, but we can get rid of it. All right. Answer choice B, I would argue even tougher. even if you understood the passage really well the first time out. Audience appreciation of other film directors' experimentations with cinematic syntax was increased. Look, that doesn't appear anywhere here. So the author does not suggest that this is the case. Where I think B is a tempting answer for a lot of people, we've seen a lot of students miss this one because of this, is that it seems obvious that that would be the case, right? So if Griffith is sort of breaking new ground and he becomes this guy who's doing all these new things with composition and doing all of these things with editing and choosing these different subjects and pioneering a different length of film, that it must be the case that audiences must have appreciated when other film directors did, and that Griffith would contribute to audiences appreciating these other innovations from other directors. But we don't know that. The author never suggests that's the case. Maybe you could argue it's common sense that that's true, but notice the framing of the question. The author never directly suggests that or indirectly suggests it. For that reason, we can get rid of B. And what about C? Many of the artistic limitations thought to be inherent in filmmaking were shown to be really non-existent. Absolutely. This is the heart of the passage, right? The whole passage is about how Griffith brought in all these changes, all these innovations, all these new ways of doing composition. Even that the very first couple of sentences talks about how photography in dramatic films used to consist of little more than just placing the actors before a stationary camera as if they're on stage. So those were the artistic limitations that people thought were present. Griffith broke through all those boundaries and all sorts of new things. So C's spot on, absolutely the heart of what the author's saying here. All right, tough one. No shame at all if you struggled a little bit. I'm going to go through one last question and wrap up the video. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. We've been teaching GRE here at GMAT Ninja for 23 years now. It's been quite a while. It's our first foray into GRE videos. So if you're enjoying these, please like, please subscribe. If you'd like to see us go through more examples of reading comprehension, once again, please let us know in the comments. We're happy to produce more of these videos. I'm trying to keep these relatively short, keep it to one example, give you a sense of what kind of a good general process is. But if you'd like to see more, just let us know in the comments and we'll do our best to give you whatever you think would help. All right, last one. Going to take a couple minutes. As always, hit the pause button if you need it. Okay, so a couple kind of big picture thoughts on this particular question. One of the reasons I chose this passage, one of the reasons I chose this question in particular, is that it's a really good illustration of some things you see all the time on the GRE. First of all, that term inferred, you're going to see lots of questions that say which of the following can be inferred. Really important thing, please don't overthink that word. The dictionary definition says something about it being something that's not directly stated. Please wipe that out of your head. When you see the word inferred or inference on a GRE question, I want you to just think, hey, of these five, which one is the most true? That's it. Keep it simple. Don't worry about whether it was directly stated, indirectly stated. Get that out of your head. A lot of you probably aren't even thinking about that. If that's the case, wonderful. But we see a large number of students who get all twisted around when they see the word inference because they go, nah, that answer is too obvious. They get rid of it. Don't do that. Whichever one of these is true is your answer. That's it. Keep it simple. Thought number two, it's very, very easy when you first start doing reading comprehension for this kind of test. You kind of obsess over the details. I've talked a lot about why I don't want you doing that on your first read. Even something like this, where it's like, okay, which of these things can be inferred? Your instinct might be, oh, I could go and look through the passage and find those things. But even your detail type questions, your inference questions, typically, they're going to be anchored in that big picture. If we've done our job and we really understand broadly, how's the author constructing their argument? How do these paragraphs fit together? You're going to know where to find things. And a lot of these answer choices, you're going to be able to eliminate really, really quickly. And that's always going to be the case. So all you need to do is understand the big picture on your first read. The details will be there for you, but you don't need to obsess over the details. A lot of what they're testing you on is understanding those details in the context of the author's overall point. This question's a pretty good example of it. All right, so which of these is Griffith most likely to agree with? A, the good director will attempt to explore new ideas as quickly as possible. You might be tempted here. Griffith obviously likes new ideas. That's a lot of what he's engaged in and what the author's focusing on. If you want to be conservative, hang on to it. I have no problem with that. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Maybe it's true that Griffith would suggest that we should do this as quickly as possible. I don't think that's the case, but there's no harm in saying, I'm just going to keep it on that first pass just in case I don't find anything better. What about B? The most important element contributing to a film's success is the ability of actors. Has nothing at all to do with what was said in the passage. Griffith is all about these innovations in composition, topic, length, editing. So would not agree with that, presumably, or at least we don't know that he would. C, the camera must be considered an integral and active element in the creation of the film. Certainly something that's very, very much emphasized throughout. Hang on to C. D, the cinema should emphasize serious and sober examinations of fundamental human problems. Look at that last paragraph. Griffith's topics were all over the place. So sometimes he did take on examinations of fundamental human problems. He also did comedies. Dude was all over the place. Get rid of D. What about E? Proper composition of scenes in a film is more important than the details of their editing. Again, we don't even need to look back at the passage here necessarily. Just off of what we did in our initial reading of the passage, first paragraph emphasizes those innovations in composition. Second one emphasizes editing. Nothing there indicates that he thought one was more important than the other. Can't get rid of, or we can get rid of E. E's not supported there. What about between A and C again? The good director will attempt to explore new ideas as quickly as possible. That's taken it way too far. There's nothing that suggests that Griffith wanted to explore new ideas as quickly as possible. Yes, he explored all sorts of new ideas, pioneering techniques. Nothing about him doing it quickly or that he believed that good directors will always attempt to do that quickly. So A sounds pretty good. C is very much superior to it because it's very, very clear from what's said in the passage that Griffith really felt that the camera is an integral part of what's creating the film. So C is our winner. All right. Hopefully that gave you a nice little taste of what you're getting into on long passages on the GRE. If you want more of the other kinds of GRE reading comp questions, stick with us. Got a couple of videos on those. And once again, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And if there's anything else you'd like to see in these videos, please let us know in the comments. Thank you so much and have fun studying.